Thanks for listening to the Media People Podcast, the show where we learn about the people who make up the media industry. I'm your host, Victor Genova. For more episodes, go to soundcloud.com/mediapeoplepodcast or subscribe on iTunes by searching Media People Podcast. Views expressed by participants are personal. Today's guest, Ben Davies, actually wears two hats. By day, Ben is an executive recruiter for Grapevine Executive Recruiters, matching candidates in the media industry with their next big opportunity. By night, he's a filmmaker, carving his own path in the Canadian film industry. Ben chats with us today about life as a headhunter and the production of his first feature-length film entitled Rise and Fall that recently wrapped principal photography and is slated for a spring 2016 release. Ben, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So let's start from the beginning. Where are you born?
I grew up in Toronto.
Born and raised?
Born and raised.
And what was life like growing up for you in Toronto?
Well, I was, just like any other kid. I loved filmmaking, sports, food, into people, and, just really, trying to have a good time and make it in this big city.
And speaking of people, I ask everyone this question on the podcast as to who their influences were. And everyone seems to come back to a family member, which you have as well. You cite your dad, which I want to hear about. But you've also got people like John Lennon, Allen Ginsberg, Michael Jordan, Vincent van Gogh. We've got some historical figures, some artists in here. Why John Lennon? Let's start with that one first.
Well, I was heavily influenced by, creative icons. John Lennon was, a major force for the Beatles as a songwriter. Someone like Allen Ginsberg was, the lead of the Beat movement. Some of his writings, his literature, has inspired me. My dad was a university professor, and I would say literature has been a big part of, what has influenced me. But I also grew up loving film. So someone like Robert Evans, who's a famous Hollywood movie producer, his story is fascinating in the sense that, he reinvented himself and really ushered in a golden era of film. Someone like Vincent van Gogh and Lennon, are pioneers, maybe a little bit chaotic in their thinking, but we're definitely, I believe, to be geniuses in their field and their craft. So I always look up to, the legends of our time.
It sounds like you had a really cultured upbringing. Is that what led you to do communications and humanities at York University?
Sure. Yeah, no, education has always been very important. My dad, who's passed away, is a major influence in the way my thought process works. Being able to be educated and have an informed opinion is very important.
I imagine you probably came from a very opinionated family, especially with your father being a university professor, because being a professor is usually directly associated with being an idealist.
Yep. I think that's fair. My brother, he owns his own ATM business, and he's an idealist. And my mom, she's a business consultant, entrepreneur. She's an idealist, and we were raised on ideas. And I think that's one of the most important things in this industry.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your brother for a second, because your first gig out of university wasn't in the media. It wasn't recruitment. It was actually working for his ATM company.
Yeah, well, coming out of school, that was a funny time. Pretty much my first gig out of school was really hospitality in ATMs. I was a server working in French bistro and selling my brother's ATMs to local restaurants, convenience stores. And I would work on a commission structure. And that was really my first taste of sales. Also working in hospitality, you learn to engage people, and it really kind of gave me my start in a lot of ways.
So working with people is a big thing for you then?
Sure.
So then after you moved on from that job, you decided to do something interesting. You actually went back to college at George Brown. And what did you study there?
So that was like a event management marketing postgraduate, and it really gave me a taste for events. Actually, we had our own like event planning course where we would be taught how to throw our own events, and I did one Paint Sounds, which was an art installation, art exhibition funk concert that we raised for the Heart and Stroke Foundation.
And so what was it like going back to school after getting out of university, thinking, that's it, I'm done with class, and then starting all over again? Like, how many years did you have between your time at York and then from when you graduated from York and then from when you started at George Brown?
It's about 4 years.
Was it hard to get back into that routine, this concept of having homework again and things like that? Or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it was definitely an adjustment, but I would say the biggest adjustment for me was actually when I graduated and realizing that, you know, the program at George Brown really didn't get me, you know, a new career or a new job. It ultimately, you know, it took me out of the workforce for a year, and then, you know, when I graduated, I had to look for a job, and it was look for a job again, and it was like starting all over. So I don't discourage people from going back to do a post-grad, but I would encourage people to really know, you know, what they want to do long term before they just kind of jump in and, you know, think that a Ryerson or a George Brown is going to get them the job. It's actually them that's going to get the job.
So what you're saying is that it's not a bad thing to do. It can be very beneficial, but you've got to be prepared for that kind of career reboot once it happens.
Absolutely.
And after that, this was probably your first gig in the media. So tell us where you landed after that.
So well, right after school, it was a little bit of a process of, you know, brand ambassador, team lead, experiential marketing, hospitality. You know, I really, you know, I don't want to say I struggled, but I would say I had a hard time really landing on my feet for the first year after school. You know, you do a course in event marketing. You know, it really doesn't lead you to, you know, some of the jobs that, you know, at the time I would have wanted. So I struggled. You know, I did experiential. I worked promotions, and from there, you know, I would say after maybe about 2 years of doing that, I really honed in on sales. Saying, you know what, I want to give sales a go, and from that I really kind of worked my way up into digital media, working with a company called Splice Media, and you know they did it was a startup mentality where it had 3 companies amalgamated into one, where they did high-end video production, SEO, and websites, and with the video production, they would be creating commercials, brand logos for companies, small businesses, and I led up the sales team for Splice Media.
But then after that, though, you went from hustling for dollars for the agency to hustling for people, trying to find them the right career path. Tell us about how that came about.
Well, it's an interesting story. You know, I worked sales for about, you know, maybe 4 or 5 years before I got into recruitment. And I remember connecting with Grapevine for a job that they had advertised, and I connected with Patty and Ray, who is the owner, and they sent me out for a job. And I remember talking with the president and saying, you know, I really like it at Grapevine. It's a fantastic opportunity. And he said to me, well, have you ever thought about becoming a recruiter? And I thought about it. And he said, well, you know, if it doesn't work out with this interview, you know, let me know. And so after the interview, I called him up and said, you know, are you still interested? And he said, oh, sure. When can you come down? And, you know, I was wearing my suit, and I said, you know, let's do it right now. And so I went right to the office, and the rest is history, I guess.
And you do something unique at Grapevine, because I know that they don't just focus on media, but you've kind of carved a niche for yourself in this industry in Toronto. And what do you primarily focus on, or who do you place where? What kind of positions are your specialty?
So programmatic, analytic, paid per click, SEO, SEM. You know, I'll look for anyone from a sales director to a campaign manager to an operations manager. You know, right to the search. So I've really niched out digital media as an area that I find is growing. And, you know, a lot of the accounts I have are media agencies and client side that focus particularly on the programmatic, the analytic.
Let's do a quick plug first. If someone's listening to this and they go, I want to get a hold of this guy because I need my next career move, or I just need a job, how can they get a hold of you, Ben?
So you contact Ben at grapevinerecruiters.com. And we're right at Peter and Richmond near the Scotiabank Theatre. And you can find us on our website, or you can email me directly, and I'd love to chat.
Come on, give them a phone number. What if they want to call? You've got to have your phone number handy.
I have my number handy. If you'd like to call me, you can call me at 416-581-1445. And my extension is 229.
That's awesome. We never call ourselves, so we're always struggling to get that phone number out to people.
I know, right? I thought I had it on me, but I didn't have the number on me right away.
Okay. So let's jump right into, what does the typical day look like for a recruiter? You get in the morning at, say, 8:30, 9 o'clock. What do you do from there?
So my day varies. I would say LinkedIn, phone, like cold calling, networking, interviewing. A lot of what I do is evaluating talent and trying to identify the right person for the particular job I have at hand.
And you mentioned LinkedIn. How big of a part of your day or what you do is LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is a big part of what I do. I would say it's really a game changer in the sense that a lot of the talent is found on LinkedIn. It's just a matter of giving the proper time to identify the right candidate and the right fit. So for me to, reach out to someone on LinkedIn could potentially be, the difference between finding the right person and the wrong person.
So let's talk about a LinkedIn profile.
Sure.
Because I'm sure you have a look at a lot of profiles. To you, what does a winning profile look like? What does a losing profile look like? One that you're willing to pass up on?
Sure. Well, listen, it all starts with experience. It all starts about the accounts you've worked with, the people that you've worked with, the references. Ultimately, I'm going to look at the company that you're currently at and the work that you're doing. Titles are meaningless. It's really about what you did, what you achieved. What were your responsibilities, and, what are you really proud of? And from there, I can evaluate based on that if you'd be a good fit for, an opportunity at hand.
And how have you seen the industry evolve? Like, what kind of, over the last year or so, what kind of jobs have crept up that weren't there maybe in years past? If you had a crystal ball and you had to look 5 years into the future, what kind of positions do you think you'll be recruiting less for, and which ones do you think there'll be higher demand for?
Well, I think it's fair to say that, anyone that was working in print, and a lesser degree, maybe radio, are having a little bit of a tougher time compared to someone that's more focused on digital, on content.
Print depresses me a bit because even though I'm a digital guy and I beat my chest about it, I'm actually a magazine subscriber. I like the convenience of magazines because you can throw them away, do whatever you want with them. Loading it up onto my iPad, having a $400 or $500 thing break on me and go, I can't read my $3 magazine because my $400 device broke, drives me nuts. But that's just kind of a sidebar. Sorry, keep going. No,
and it's just kind of the way it's going. You mentioned positions. I look at like an online operations manager, a technical account manager. What I'm seeing more and more are people taking a hybrid approach with the account manager where they, will amalgamate a trader and an account manager into one role. So they would do, both jobs. Programmatic sales director, I find, is becoming more and more, like, good salespeople are hard to find, and I'm sure you know all about that.
Yep.
I find these are the roles that are evolving, but more than anything, it's really about the data, the analytics. Somebody that can strategize, where an audience behavior is going to be to anticipate, someone's buying habits is becoming invaluable, and it's all big data that we're looking at, and we're trying to identify where to put our advertisement. If it was a billboard on the side of the highway 10 years ago, it's a billboard on your mobile device now.
Outside of LinkedIn and making cold calls, what's the next biggest tool in your toolbox for finding people?
Referrals. Networking is is vital. And it's really like anything in this world, but being able to go to events, be engaged within the industry, having a pulse on what's going on in the city, associations, LinkedIn groups, being able to just talk to people and really, read articles and just really be engaged in what's going on.
If you could give, we're going to wrap up this part before we jump into your filmmaking career, because I'm really interested in that.
Sure.
But if you could give anyone listening some advice, anyone who's looking, what would you say to them apart from call me? Well, anything that you could tell them to do for their LinkedIn profile, their resume, things like that?
Well, identify the channel you want to be in and go after it wholeheartedly. Tailor your resume to the job at hand. I have too many people that they contact me saying that they want a job but have no experience in it or have never worked in it. Really identify what you want to do and back it up with examples, back it up with metrics. You are your own brand. So represent yourself accordingly to the job description that's at hand. And if you need to do 2 resumes, then do that.
I lied. I actually have one more question.
Sure.
Have you ever pushed back at a company and said, look, what you're looking for isn't what is out there talent-wise? I'm kind of referring back to that LinkedIn meme that's been floating around that says something like position or the industry is only 2 or 3 years old looking for someone with 30 years experience, something like that. Have you ever had to push back and go, that's...
Well, it's not really about pushing back. It's about identifying what's out there and I'm looking to collaborate with somebody and really identify what their needs are and then give them what the expectations of the candidates are. If somebody's out there and they're demanding 80,000, but they're only being offered 60,000, they're not going to get the good people that they want. But if they have a certain need, a certain profile that they're looking for, then I identify people that matches that. Sure.
No, seriously. So you said you were an actor as a child. Where did you get your start? And how did you fall into that?
Well, my story is kind of funny. I always did acting in high school. I remember Second City and, I did improv and sketch comedy as a kid. For me, acting is always kind of like a love affair with a mistress that always breaks your heart.
That's one way to put it.
I remember I worked in hospitality doing the acting thing, trying to make it work. And, I got to a point where I wanted to be able to make my own films, my own projects. And it became a hobby of mine, filmmaking, to, be able to create the story and the film that, I want to tell, and not just go to some auditions and recruitment for me, is a great passion, and being able to identify the right people is really important to me. And filmmaking has always been kind of an extracurricular activity for me as I build my sales career, build my recruitment career. It's a balance. Being able to do both isn't easy. So it's really my spare time is dedicated to shooting on the weekend or after work or just trying to make it work because it's not always easy.
So being a film buff and a filmmaker then, what are your favorite films? If you had to pick a couple to put on, or you were stranded on a deserted island with a Blu-ray player, which ones would you take with you?
Well, we can break this down into genre to genre. I'm a big, mystery buff. I love comedy. Like a story like Usual Suspects always fascinated me. Even Birdman was, somatic theater at its best.
So that was a brilliant film.
Yeah.
Just the way it was shot in like one take, even though it wasn't one take.
Beautiful. I really, love a good laugh with The Big Lebowski. It's one of the funniest films, or, anything that Bill Murray's done. I still love Ghostbusters, or then like a Fight Club, like a psychological thriller. I've always liked a good psychological.
It's funny that you bring those three, the first three movies you mentioned, Usual Suspects, Birdman, and Big Lebowski, because arguably those films helped certain actors make a comeback. Usual Suspects did it with Kevin Spacey. Birdman did it with Michael Keaton. And to a certain degree, Big Lebowski did it with John Goodman.
Mm-hmm. Jeff Bridges as well.
That's true, Jeff Bridges as well. So, and I mean, if you look at these actors, they've all either won Oscars in the last 10 years or at least been nominated. So it sounds like you like a good comeback story.
You can never, you never can count out the heart of a champion. Now that's a quote from, I think it was a coach of the Houston Rockets in, I think, 94. That's what they said after they won the second championship back to back. I like an underdog story. I've always liked a guy that's struggled, that's been persistent, and that, you know, prevails in the end. Those are the characters I've always enjoyed to play, and those are the stories I like to write.
And that is a beautiful segue into the film. I think you just wrapped principal photography on it?
Yeah. No, we were shooting for a good 6-7 months there.
But you got to tell us what it's called first. What's it called?
So the story is The Rise and Fall. And The Rise and Fall is a dark comedy thriller about a struggling comedian that reinvents himself, like a coming-of-age story.
So again, another person reinventing themselves or making a comeback. And how did you get that off the ground? Because when it comes to making a movie at the level that you're making at, there are a lot of moving pieces. So if you don't mind me asking, let's start from the beginning. Where does one go for financing?
The financing was myself.
All by yourself?
Yeah, no, I did an Indiegogo that raised me a little bit of money. But you know what? This is a story of, you know, recruitment by day, film by night. You know, my checks that I would make by placing people would go towards the film equipment, go towards, you know, I paid the actors, the food, and, you know, we did this on the weekends. I made it work, in the day, and then at night, you know, it wouldn't be every night, but, you know, some nights, yeah, we would shoot, like from 6 till 10 or 11 at night, just to get what we were looking for. And then we would pick it up another day.
Did you, like, what was the casting like? Did you have to go through, I mean, obviously they auditioned for you, but how did you go about finding these people? Like, where do actors go to find work per se?
Well, it's really about, the people you know. You know, we held auditions, and we had people come in and read parts. And, you know, I had some people that were well connected within the industry, and they had some recommendations, and I had some recommendations. And, you know, it's all just gut feel, you know, like you don't really know until you work with them, and you hope that it's a right marriage, kind of like recruitment. You know, and you don't really know until they're kind of there and they're working and they're doing. And for me, it's just, you know, like there's Mandy.com, there's Craigslist, there's Kijiji, but like recruitment, it's really down to referrals and the network you have.
So now that you've wrapped principal photography, you go into post-production. How long do you anticipate that would take until you've got a finished product that you can screen?
Probably about 3 or 4 months, like realistically. You know, my editor is, you know, we're working together to put it together, but it's not worth bringing out until it's ready. So, you know, I anticipate a good 3-4 months. Do
you have, though, a hard deadline for yourself? Because I'm the type of person that if I'm working on something and I don't set a hard deadline for myself, I'll finish it, then I'll redo it. I don't want to call myself a perfectionist because I'm the farthest thing from being perfect at anything, but I'm the type of guy that'll keep tinkering at it until I finally say, go, we're done with it.
Spring 2006. You know, I think for me that's, you know, I want to...
You mean 2016? Don't worry.
Right. Spring 2016. It's been a long week. What can I say?
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, spring 2016.
And then once you do get a cut, what do you do for distribution? Is this going to be something that goes to the smaller cinemas, the bigger ones, film festivals? Where can people look for it when it does come out?
Yeah. I'd like to submit it to some festivals. You know, like this is a passion project, so I'm going to distribute it any way I can. It's just about you know, once it's done and I feel like it's ready, then yeah, we'll go after some festivals and we'll see.
Tell you what, to help you out with that, I mean, not that I have huge legions of people listening to this, but when it is finished, Why don't we do one just all about the rise and fall? We'll do a podcast where we can go through just the whole process in depth, if you want to.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'd be happy to.
Perfect. Okay. Ben, really appreciate your time today. I'm going to close with the same question I ask everyone. If you weren't in media, what would you be doing and why?
I'd be working on a soap opera, acting, making no money.
That's still technically media, but okay, we'll let it pass.
Okay.
Hey, look, the way reality television has taken over daytime TV, I've got a retired father, and that's all he talks about. It sounds like there aren't going to be soap operas in a couple of years.
Well, you know what? My next film, if I can do it, and don't steal this idea, but I'd love to do a mockumentary on the making of a soap opera.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
Anyways, Ben, thanks a lot for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
That's it for today's show. For more episodes, go to soundcloud.com/mediapeoplepodcast or subscribe on iTunes by searching Media People Podcast. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter @VicGenova.